Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Professor Sistrom, and I'm reaching out to the student body. Okay, students, the semester is about to begin, and we are about to go into the coursework. You will receive a video log from me to make sure you get a brief understanding of how to get in here. But always remember, you can email me or you can meet me inside of the office hours via Zoom. With that being said, I will cover each and every one of these courses every week to make sure that you get a thorough understanding of the lessons for that particular week. You see right now you got CNS 110, CNS 105, CNS/CIS 118. So I will be covering each and every one of those sections. You may be a student who is in all of those sections. If you are, kudos to you. But I will go into each and every one of them individually. So let's begin and get started with one of these sections. For my CNS students 110, let's go in here. We're just going to take a brief look around and see what we have to do. I am not going to walk through all of this because in this video log, it walks you through the whole session. What I want to do is get you into the course. Now, like it said in an earlier video, once you click on here and go into content, you will have these sections that you'll be able to choose from to actually start your work. I always tell students to start here. It really don't matter which one you choose, but it's best to always start there. You need to make sure that you take a look at your syllabi. Remember, people, if you've been in a class with me, you know that the syllabus is king. Not knowing your syllabus is dangerous. So I'm going to stop right now because I want to open up the syllabus to a particular section. Okay, so you can see one of the sections that I opened up the syllabus to is this particular section here. This tells you everything you need to know and what you'll be doing to get you started. Make sure that you look at this. The reason I'm not showing the whole syllabus is because this will be on my YouTube channel and it just has too much information on there that is critical to the class. Now, if we proceed to go down in the syllabus, you will see that you got all of your classes locked out. We're going to have a discussion over Module 1, course introduction, and then show you a little bit inside of that introduction so we can get you pumped up and ready to go. But once you log into your class, in this syllabus, there is an access key that you can use to get started for 2 weeks, like I said in the previous video. But remember, if you do not purchase the class, you will lose access to all of your material because that access key only lasts for 2 weeks. So make sure you use the access key. It is in the syllabus. I don't want to show it because anybody in the world will be able to pull it up, but it's in the syllabus. Now, what I want to do is go back to content and proceed to the class in there. But all you have to do is click on one of the weeks and then proceed to go into the class. I'm going to pause right here because this is going to take a minute to come up. Now, when I say I'm going to pause, you won't actually see the pause because you won't even know it. I'm just saying that because you'll see me jump immediately into another section. So now once you get in here, you won't be able to come directly in here until you actually either use that access key or purchase the course. As you can see, once you get in here, though, you'll be able to click on the outline and it'll show you all the course material. Now, you have labs, you have reading in here. This is your book. This is your lab manual. This is everything. All you have to do is proceed to start doing the work. Ideally, you start from the top and then you go to the bottom, whatever the bottom may be. In here, you know that the bottom is way down here. If you notice you got these little buttons over here you can click that'll jump you to the next section. You're going to hear a lot about Endpoint Administrator. That's what this course is built for, to get you prepared to get that certification if you wish to do that. But that's what this course is about. Not only to learn the skills, whether it be by reading a chapter or doing the labs, but also to come out with a credential that will get you prepared for the workplace. Now, I'm going to shrink this up so you can see all of the sections. We have approximately 13 sections. Remember, you have some exams in here at the bottom that you will have to do. I said this in the last video, that you received via email, and that's on your desktop. So when you come to the desktop, you see that video right there. But with that being said, just make sure you read your syllabus carefully and you do not make a mistake. And if you have any issues, seek me out via Zoom so I can show you how to do this. But don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till Sunday when you got to get all your work in to ask me questions. And if you're not clear on anything, remember, just email me so we can set up a meeting and start talking about this information. You know, I'm that type of professor. I like to work with my students. Now, just briefly, I'm going to come back up here, and you will see up here, I can pull up a particular lab. As you can see, the lab have multiple things. Okay, so the lab is open, and all the lab asks you to do is read the information. Once you read it, you do the work. So since I've been doing this for a while, I'm just going to go ahead and do a few things just to show you how easy it is to do. You got a printer there. I can take this power outlet and just put it over to the side. You see it right there. Then I can drag this up and plug it up here in one of these sections. And you see, it's going to tell you if you do something wrong. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm going to go over here to one of the sections, and there it is. Simple and easy. Now, I want to go get a monitor and put the monitor on the desktop. So keeping this real simple, that's all you have to do. You just have to do the lessons that it instructs you to do in here. So now let's talk a little bit about the chapter. We're not going to spend too much time on it because we're just going over chapter 1. It's a lot of things in this particular lesson that you had a chance to look at, but let's just go through chapter 1. Chapter 1 is just an introduction to the course. That's it. It's going to start out by teaching you a little bit about the 2 certifications that follow this course. One of them is called Test Out Client Pro, as you can see it here. And the other one is a real big one called Microsoft MD 102 Endpoint Administrator. Now, listen to me. I know that a lot of you would love to get your certification and lead this class. And we're going to gear you towards the first one, which is Test Out Client Pro. But I don't anticipate you really going at it, but I'm going to give you the keys to be able to get this certification, and that's this: labs, labs, labs. The labs really show you how to get this certification, and your final exam will be sitting for the Test Out Client Pro. But we'll talk more about that later on, but don't fear. It has nothing to do with your overall grade other than another exam that you're taking, and if you don't pass it, that's okay, as long as you score high enough on your final exam. But in this course, as you saw earlier, you have a lot of things that make up your exam. But ideally, we would love for you to leave out of here with at least one credential other than just taking a class. Now, this gives you a basic bird's eye view of what this certification is about. It's about deploying, configuring, managing, and maintaining and protecting systems. That's it. As an endpoint administrator, you will be doing that for these particular systems. It's about education, experience, and then getting certified. So the education is reading the material. The experience is doing labs, labs, labs. If you know me, I'm always hyping up labs. And then, of course, you want to get a credential like a certification. The simulation is what's going to give you the skills to do the work. So do your best to do every lab. And if you mess it up, I set it up to where you can go do it all over again. And I take the highest points. So now you know that you use the lab simulator to learn how to do the actual work. You explore the interfaces of each one of these devices as you're working through the simulation, and you set up a computer using the lab simulator. So you'll be able to do everything. You just saw me demonstrate a simple setup. Make sure you try to remember your key definitions. Hyper-V, what is that? Test summary. But when you see these keywords like Hyper-V, make sure you understand what they are and what they mean. We'll talk more about it as we proceed on through the class. This was just a basic breakdown of what you'll be going through in this class.
The CompTIA MD 102 Endpoint Administrator Certification tests a very specific mandate: your ability to reliably deploy, manage, and secure Windows operating systems across highly varied corporate environments. Successfully executing this mandate requires recognizing that Windows deployment is not a single static process. It is a highly configurable continuum of strategies. At one end of this spectrum, you have the localized manual provisioning of a single machine. At the opposite end, you are managing the simultaneous automated configuration of thousands of endpoints scattered across the globe. The lowest level of this continuum is the bare metal installation. This requires physical interaction with the hardware, using local media and command line interfaces to manually partition hard drives and write boot sectors. The highest level operates entirely above the hardware layer. Through zero-touch, cloud-based automated provisioning, an administrator can fully configure a device before the end user even opens the box. To understand how these environments are built, we are going to construct this deployment continuum from the ground up, starting with local installation media and scaling to enterprise cloud frameworks. Passing the MD 102 exam and operating effectively in enterprise IT requires mastering both the mechanical execution of these installations and the architectural knowledge of how to scale them. The foundational step in OS deployment is provisioning a single unconfigured computer. That begins with creating bootable USB installation media. This source document outlines the strict physical constraints for this media. The USB drive must possess a minimum of 8 GB of storage space and be formatted with the FAT32 file system to ensure hardware compatibility. To prepare this physical media, administrators rely on the diskpart command line utility. In diskpart, execute list disk to map drives, select disk to isolate the target USB, and clean to strip data. Next, designate a partition with create partition primary. Establish the file system with format fs equals FAT32 quick, and mark it active for booting. At this point, the drive is prepared to hold data. However, simply dropping the Windows ISO files onto the FAT32 partition will not make it bootable. You must write the bootmgr bootloader program to the volume using the bootsect.exe executable with the /nt60 flag. If your destination hardware utilizes a RAID configuration, the standard Windows setup will fail to see the drives entirely. You must load specific RAID controller drivers from an external source during this initial setup phase to proceed. Mastering these command line utilities is mandatory. They establish the literal boot sector architecture that every higher-level operating system function relies upon to exist. Once you move past provisioning blank hardware, the challenge shifts to modernizing an existing fleet. When moving machines to a newer version of Windows, administrators face a strategic choice. You must decide between an in-place upgrade or a clean install. The in-place upgrade offers seamless continuity. It preserves existing user profiles, local data, and installed applications. However, this continuity comes with a cost. It also preserves existing registry misconfigurations, software conflicts, and underlying system errors. If an existing machine suffers from baseline stability issues, transferring that corrupted state to a new operating system is a serious liability. In these cases, a clean install, wiping the storage device entirely, is the only technically sound option. To prevent permanently destroying critical data, administrators use Microsoft's User State Migration tool, bridging the gap to safely restore specific user states onto the fresh drive. Beyond data retention, upgrades are strictly gated by the specific editions of Windows currently installed on the hardware. This documentation outlines the rigid hierarchy of edition upgrades. While a machine running Windows Pro can be upgraded directly to Windows Enterprise, a machine running Windows Home cannot. It lacks the architectural foundation to make that jump. Upgrading an endpoint is always a strategic trade-off. Prioritizing seamless user continuity inherently means accepting the risk of carrying over legacy system contamination. When an organization needs to provision hundreds of devices simultaneously, manual installations using USB drives or individual setup executables scale poorly. To automate deployment across a local network, administrators use the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, or MDT. MDT does not operate in isolation. As shown in the prerequisites, it requires the installation of Windows Deployment Services to handle network booting and the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit to manage imaging and configuration. Once these are installed on a management system, the administrator uses the Deployment Workbench to create a centralized deployment share. This repository holds the OS files, drivers, and custom scripts required for the mass installation. While MDT drastically reduces manual labor, it has a strict geographic limitation. The target devices must be connected to the corporate local network to pull from the deployment share. To bypass strict local network constraints entirely, Microsoft introduced Windows Autopilot, a powerful cloud-based evolution of the entire deployment process. Autopilot customizes the out-of-the-box experience directly from the cloud. When a user connects a new off-the-shelf device to the internet, the service intercepts the initial setup and provisions it with corporate configurations and security policies. At this scale, the configuration workload shifts entirely to the network or the cloud before the hardware is even unboxed. Installing the operating system is only half the battle. A standalone installation is isolated and vulnerable. It must be firmly bound to the corporate security architecture. Windows systems default to operating within a work group, a decentralized peer-to-peer structure where each device manages its own security and storage. In an enterprise, this must be replaced by a centralized domain network. As the documentation explicitly states, work groups are designed for 20 or fewer computers. Beyond that scale, maintaining individual account credentials on every separate machine becomes a massive security risk. Joining the machine to a domain controller shifts all authentication requests and security enforcements to a single centralized database. From there, administrators use the Group Policy Editor, accessed via gpedit.msc, to centrally configure and enforce thousands of specific registry settings across the entire Active Directory network. Furthermore, securing the physical asset requires encrypting the data at rest. Microsoft's BitLocker provides essential whole disk encryption, though it is restricted exclusively to Pro and Enterprise editions of Windows. For BitLocker to function securely, it relies on a strict hardware dependency, the Trusted Platform Module. The TPM is a dedicated crypto processor chip on the motherboard that securely stores the encryption keys, tying the drive directly to that specific physical hardware. This combination of domain membership and hardware-level encryption transforms the operating system into a cryptographic, policy-enforced asset. The Windows deployment continuum spans a massive range of methodologies, each designed for a specific logistical scale. You use tools like DiskPart and manual boot media for localized, bare-metal hardware interventions. You execute in-plate upgrades when you must make the strategic choice to prioritize user data continuity over complete system purity. And you deploy MDT and Autopilot to provide the automated abstraction required to enforce enterprise-wide compliance. These are the core competencies tested by the MD 102 exam, and they form the daily reality of an IT professional managing modern fleets. An endpoint administrator must identify precisely which architectural constraint demands a specific tool.